Now, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump notched up big wins on Super Tuesday, votes in 12 states, making it the biggest test for the candidates so far. But it didn't take long for scuffles between the favourites to break out.
We're going to make America great again, folks. We're going to make it great again.
America never stopped being great. We have to make America whole.
You know, I watched Hillary's speech, and she's talking about wages have been poor and everything's doing badly, but we're going to make it. She's been there for so long. I mean, if she hasn't straightened it out by now, she's not going to straighten it out in the next 4 years. It's just going to become worse and worse.
Well, billionaire Donald Trump there crushed his rivals in 7 states in the Republican race. For the Democrats, Hillary Clinton took all states from Bernie Sanders except for where the anti-establishment candidate leads. The easiest win for Sanders, though, came in his home state of Vermont.
It is about making a political revolution.
In fact, he picked up around 86% of the vote there, and crowds, as you can see, gave him a superstar reception. RT's Caleb Mopin was at the Sanders rally in the state's largest city of Burlington.
Behind me, candidate Bernie Sanders is singing one of the classic American folk songs, This Land Is Your Land, a patriotic tune written by Woody Guthrie, opposing the private ownership of land. So the supporters here are excited. They're ready to continue. He calls himself a socialist, but young people don't seem to have a problem with that.
The word socialist means nothing to me. It's Bernie. That's it.
What do you think about those who say that Bernie is promising things that can't be achieved, that it won't be possible to deliver on the free education and the things that he would like to pass?
If we as people decide that that's what we want, that's what will happen. We don't have to ask our legislators to do this for us.
What do you think of this argument, that he's like the left-wing version of Donald Trump?
You know, with Bernie being as radical as people say, I think that sometimes it takes a ripple to make an effect.
So I came of age when the economy crashed. You know, I'm 20 years old, grew up in a good economy, and then afterwards I felt like there was no opportunities, no hope. Bernie comes along, and I felt hope again.
This is a room full of enthusiasm. This is Burlington, Vermont, where Senator Sanders began his career, then eventually becoming the House of Representatives, and then from there eventually moving into the U.S. Senate. Sanders has said he's not giving up and his campaign is not going anywhere place. Bernie Sanders continues his campaign regardless of electoral setbacks.
Caleb Mopin reporting there. Well, a local brewery in Vermont has celebrated the Bernie Sanders campaign with a special, quote, slightly sour and forward-thinking ale. In fact, the 300 cases of beer did sell out in just 5 hours, but you can still get a taste of the so-called Bernie Vice on tap. Well, one of the most divisive themes in the race to the White House has been the candidate's stance on the US establishment, with Democratic hopeful Bernie Sanders not holding back.
We're taking on the political establishment.
When you take on the establishment, sick and tired with establishment.
However, the establishment media has been hitting back at Sanders, criticising everything from his age to his alleged naivety.
Every public college and university should be tuition free. What about investing in jobs and education? Wages in America are just too low. Ban assault weapons. Destroy the brutal and barbaric ISIS regime.
But the Democratic establishment's gamble on Hillary is not without its risks either, because in virtually every head-to-head poll, Hillary Clinton barely beats Donald Trump, who now seems the likely Republican nominee. Bernie Sanders, on the other hand, though, has an 8-point lead on the Donald nationally. Former Ohio State Senator Nina Turner thinks that Bernie Sanders supporters won't back Hillary if she wins the Democrat nomination.
A lot of the new voters that Senator Sanders is bringing in do not have loyalty to the Democratic Party. And so that's something that Democrats have to be very much aware of. That loyalty is not to a party, it is really to the mission by which Senator Sanders is running. A lot of Senator Sanders supporters may not come along. I've heard some say as much throughout the country as I have traveled from state to state. She's already started to co-opt a lot of his beliefs and what he has been fighting for and standing for all of his political life. I dare say even before he got into politics, she would definitely have to adopt a lot of his platform.
And the race for the White House may get even tighter as another third-party candidate considers running if Bernie Sanders loses the nomination. The former governor of the state of Minnesota, Jesse Ventura, told RT about his plans.
I ought to run. I mean, the last Republican debate looked like the WWE. I'm waiting for the next Republican debate so somebody hits somebody with a chair. I'm watching things unfold on the Democratic and Republican side, and I'm seeing this swelling of anger out there. And if in the end it ends up Hillary and and not Trump or a regular candidate, or even with Trump, Jesse Ventura coming into the race changes the dynamics of it completely, I would think.
Well, there are actually over a dozen parties taking part in the US election, but they are being almost completely ignored by mainstream media. Some past and present third-party candidates who told us why the system makes sure that outsiders get blocked.
Interesting that in both political parties, the candidates that are doing well are outsider candidates. People in both parties are repudiating their party leadership. And if you look at polls of the American electorate, the biggest chunk of Americans now have rejected both the Democratic and Republican parties. But what our political system does is suppress political opposition, I'm sorry to say. So the media tends not to cover us.
When we got media coverage, we got a lot of support because we had a message very much like Bernie Sanders' message. We talked about a political revolution. We talked about the corrupting influence of money in our system. We talked about breaking up the banks that are too large to fail and holding those who created economic disaster, not only in our country but around the world, accountable for their illegal conduct. The media, of course, wouldn't focus on your message, and we see the same thing with the presidential debate now. Presidential Debate Commission, which was formed by the Republican and Democratic parties. They did it so they could keep everybody else off the stage.